I ended up with these four categories, which I call the four lenses of remarkability, and kind of use these lenses on your own company or on your own brand to help you really identify what makes you remarkable. And the four lenses are find, focus, forge, and frame. Find means there's already something remarkable about your business. Focus is all about niching down until you're the only person offering your exact services to your customers. Forge is a little harder to explain, but it's about the idea of creating something outside of your core offerings that's in alignment with your mission and values. And then frame is about positioning and reframing what you offer, not necessarily changing it, but reframing it in such a way that suddenly its value is very clear.
Wait a second. We don't do that. We sell everything to everyone, Rich.
Yeah, I love that line. I mean, didn't we all start there, right?
And we're back for another episode of the Startup Hustle. This is your host today, Matt Watson. Very excited to be joined by Rich Brooks, who's the president of Flight New Media. We're going to be talking about, he has this great formula about being remarkable, and the Remarkability Formula. Some great stuff we're going to talk about. He owns a digital marketing company. We'll spend some time talking about digital marketing today. Before we get started, I do want to remind you that you need to subscribe to our newsletter. Go to startuphustlenews.com. There's 20,000 people that get our weekly newsletter. If you're looking to hire software developers, don't forget you can check out my company, Fullscale. We have front-end, back-end, .NET, PHP, JavaScript, whatever you need help with. Check us out at fullscale.io. Rich, welcome to the show, man.
Matt, thanks so much for having me. Looking forward to it.
So, what is it like to own a digital marketing company in 2024 with AI and all the different things going on?
It's exciting and exhausting, I guess is the short answer. So this is our 27th year in business. So I've been doing this for quite some time. And I feel that, I came back from MACON last year, the marketing AI conference that they have out in Cleveland, and just eye-opening in terms of all the stuff that was going on and how it impacts marketing specifically, agency life as well. And I had to go back to my team and kind of like pass on my excitement about this without threatening their jobs at the same time or making them feel threatened. So that was a little bit of a challenge, but I feel that this is just a really exciting time to be in marketing and an exciting time to be connected to technology. I know that there are some people who are really nervous about what's going on or anxious about it. And I think that the best thing you can do is just really kind of lean into it and understand how you can use these tools to really increase your productivity, but also the quality of your work. And I think that right now, that's our big challenge. And internally, our challenge is how do we integrate AI into our digital marketing SOPs?
Well, so for example, I write a weekly newsletter, startuphustlenews.com. Check it out, guys. And like yesterday, I'm like, I need to write my newsletter. Well, I knew what the topic was going to be, but instead of sitting down and writing it, I went for a walk. I went for a walk for 10 minutes. I talked into my phone and used the voice to text. And then at the end of it, just took all the text that came out of it. And then I go back to AI and I'm like, hey, help me turn this into something that makes sense. And it does a super good job of helping me edit it. And then I'm still going to do another round of edits. But it's so much easier to do something like that than it is to sit there at a blank piece of paper, blank Google Doc, like, what am I going to write about? It's so much easier to just talk and just ramble and use AI to help you, continue and improve it. Like, there are so many great benefits to AI that I think are making a profound difference in a lot of different ways.
Absolutely. And I love to write, so I don't want to give up my writing. But for example, it was my turn to write this month's blog for the company, and we decided the topic was going to be email marketing KPIs. And I could obviously write that article. I've been doing things for so many years. I could sit there. But I was just kind of like, what if I forget something? So humans are really bad at seeing what they're missing. But AI is not. So I just said to AI, the simple prompt was, give me a framework for writing an email KPI article. And it was able to do this. And of course, I'm going to make edits to it, and I'm going to write it, not AI. But
Yeah.
But that was very helpful. And then the other thing is, and we were talking a little bit in the green room about, how AI is impacting our business. For me, SEO is becoming all about writing the best possible article for the most specific, ideal customer profile you could absolutely have. So part of the work that I was doing when I was writing this article is I have a buyer persona for Flight New Media. The director of marketing or the owner of a certain size business. And so I'm also saying, when you're writing this, actually, after I got the framework, I said, rewrite it with this buyer persona in mind. These are their main concerns. And that then fine-tuned that article even more and made it even easier for me to write it and make sure that I didn't leave out some important aspect that my ideal customer would actually want to know.
Well, so I'd love to talk to you about your remarkability formula. I feel like that's kind of hard to say, by the way. That's a hard word. And it come down to everybody is remarkable in some way or another, right? And you had a formula to help people make the most out of that. Like, can you help? Love to walk through that with you.
Yeah, so the whole idea came because, obviously we work with a lot of businesses, and quite honestly, sometimes clients come to us or prospects come to us and they're like, I need Facebook ads. And I'm like, maybe you do, maybe you don't, but let's kind of get a better understanding about what's going on in your business and why people should choose you. And so it was this idea of like, how do you stand out both online and off? Because marketing is much easier when there's something unique about us and it's something that our ideal customer would care about. In kind of gathering some examples of big brands, small brands, ourselves, our clients, I ended up with these 4 categories, which I call the 4 lenses of remarkability. And kind of use these lenses on your own company or on your own brand to help you really identify what makes you remarkable. And the 4 lenses are find, focus, forge, and frame. And I can go into a little bit more detail and happy to answer any questions, Matt, you might have about them or give you examples, real world examples. But find means there's already something remarkable about your business. The work now is to identify what it is and then lean into that. Give it a name. Focus is all about niching down until you're the only person offering your exact services to your customers. Forge is a little harder to explain, but it's about the idea of creating something outside of your core offerings that's in alignment with your mission and values. And then frame is about positioning and reframing what you offer, not necessarily changing it, but reframing it in such a way that suddenly its value is very clear to your ideal customer. And if you use one or more of these lenses together, then it becomes incredibly powerful. And the whole idea here is you don't want to be competing with somebody else. You don't want to be competing on price. You don't want people to be able to hold you up side by side with your competitor and just randomly choose one of you, maybe who's cheaper, but instead have a really clear offering where you're the only one who can actually deliver this particular result. And that's kind of the idea behind the remarkability formula.
Wait a second. We don't do that. We sell everything to everyone, Rich.
Yeah, I love that line. I mean, didn't we all start there, right? It's like, I remember talking to one guy once and he said, he owned a Mexican restaurant. He's like, my customers, people who need to eat to survive. And I'm like, okay, that's cute. That's clever even. But let's be honest. You're a quarter mile from the mall in Portland, Maine. You're not serving everybody. It's only going to be people who are near the mall at this time of day and who like Mexican food or looking for a cheap, just start to realize you already have started niching down, and then it's just kind of lean into that. And one of the things that I tell all young entrepreneurs who come to me either because they're coming for business or we just end up having a conversation because I love talking about business is that they never want to say no. They never want to say no to an opportunity.
Yeah.
And the whole idea here is, I'm not saying you can't take on other work, but really be known for one, the more narrow your niche is, first of all, the better you become at it. You just continually improve. And as you were saying, you've got software specifically for your niche because you're working with them all the time. You understand them better than anybody else. Those are all huge benefits. And when I was doing the research for this particular topic, one of the things I discovered, I think this was back in 2017 was the newest data I had, but the average U.S. Primary care physician made a whopping $270,000 a year in salary. But in the same year, a specialist in the U.S. made $399,000. So it was like $150,000 more per year for arguably knowing less and being able to help fewer people. But if you've blown out your ACL, you want a specialist. If your heart
Yeah.
is, like, if you just had a heart attack, you want the specialist. So as consumers, we're willing to pay a premium for the specialist. So I think that there's an argument to be made that the more you focus on one thing, as long as that bucket's big enough to support your business, then the narrower that niche is, the more successful you'll be.
Well, to your point about Mexican restaurants, one of the places I like to go to the most is this place here in Kansas City called Taco Republic. And guess what? They have the best tacos. They're niche down to the taco, right? Like,
Right.
And they're really good at it. It's the only thing they do. Tacos.
Yes, exactly.
Right? So when you talk about finding what's unique, I feel like a lot of people probably would think, like, I don't really know why I'm unique. Like, they struggle with, like, how am I unique? Is that a common problem you see with your customers?
Yeah, and I would say even when I look in the mirror, I sometimes struggle with this as well. I think it's a matter of it's hard to be unique in a world as connected as we are, but I do think you can find things that are uncommon or unusual. And when you start pairing these and layering these up with different elements from different lenses, that's when you really start to find what you're doing. And, you could say like, oh, I'm the greatest taco bar in Tulsa, Oklahoma, or Portland, Maine, or like those are three truths. And maybe they are the best taco place where that is. Now you are unique and you've niched down, and that's something that you can talk about. But a lot of it comes down to what is important in the eyes of the beholder, in your customer. And so I remember when I bought my first home, this was several years ago, many years ago, the paint was like peeling off the walls on the outside. And I knew I had to get a paint job. I'd never hired a painter before. I had heard that it would take like days and days for them to do the work, and that they wouldn't show up on time, and that it would take forever, and my house would look like, a construction zone. And one of the painters we talked to said he could get the whole thing done in 2 days. And the way that he did this is he had a team of 20 guys who showed up, and literally they, from top to bottom, they painted the entire house in a day, came back a day or two later after it had dried and did another coat of paint. Just amazing efficiency. I've never seen a paint group that, a painting team this big. They came, they saw, they conquered, they moved on. And all of my neighbors, of course, notice this because there's like 5 white vans parked outside my house, and they see all the guys on ladders painting the house, and they're gone so quickly. Like, that's pretty remarkable. I mean, that's something that's a pain point that people have. It's very difficult to replicate this as well. I mean, it's especially in Maine, where painting is a seasonal type of business because of the weather. So it's like when you're looking for your own remarkability, your own uniqueness, also look for things that are very difficult to replicate and that your customers care a lot about. This was something that they were already doing. I don't think they realized what they had because they didn't think that this was as big a deal as I did. But I would argue with them today, like, you should give that a name, and that should be your calling card, like the 2-day paint job or the 1-day paint job or whatever it would be. And that's going to be the thing that's going to get people like waiting in line to work with.
There's one that's called like 2 More Weeks construction company or something. It's kind of the opposite of that. Or like,
that is
we'll be done in 2 more weeks.
That's more like truth in advertising.
Yeah. So I love this about what makes you unique. And I think to your degree, it's like trying to figure out if there's something that really makes you unique and then owning that thing. Right. But the problem is we all want to appeal to everyone. But if you're trying to sell to everyone, you're selling to no one, right? Like, because you don't have enough focus, which is the next thing on your list about niching down. And we were talking before, and it's like that's one of the things you even struggled with your own business, right? It's like the type of customers that you deal with. And even at Full Scale, we work with all kinds of startups, scale-ups. We have bigger tech companies. One of the largest WordPress hosting companies in the world is a customer of ours. One of the largest movie theater chains in the world is a customer of ours. It's all over the place. So when people ask me who your customers are, I'm like, it's a whole bunch of people that are all over the place, which kind of makes it hard, right? In some degree, you'd rather have like a really, really focused niche, but sometimes you just sell to whoever comes to you. But it creates a lot of challenges. You have the same sort of challenge, right?
Yeah, and I would say that some of this is like how you position yourself and then what you're willing to do, especially when you're just getting started. It is hard to say no to business when you're trying to make rent and everything like that. So you're probably going to take on more jobs that you might not want to in the long run. But then again, in the early stages of your business, you probably should be trying a few additional things anyways to really understand where you best fit in. But I would also argue, like for us, and we were talking about this, like Flight New Media, my agency, we do not have an industry. We don't serve a specific clientele. Most of our clients are small to medium-sized businesses. We have identified things like they're usually the owner is in charge of marketing, or they have a director of marketing who has the trust of the owner. Those are the clients that we tend to do the best work with. So we kind of go after that, but it's hard to describe that, right? Like kind of like what you were saying, you have a lot of different companies you could work with. So another way you might approach it is there a position or a job within a company that is best suited to hire you, and you focus on their needs. Another thing is maybe instead of focusing so much on who you serve, you focus on what you serve. So we may narrow our focus just down from marketing to digital marketing, from digital marketing to SEO, from SEO down to technical SEO. As long as there's enough business in there, that's another way that you can really niche down. And I see a lot of people who are successful by being the Facebook ads person or the LinkedIn person or whatever it may be. And I think that that's another way too. So it may not be just an industry or a client-based niche that you want to get into. It's really about anything you can do to kind of get rid of some of the business. I know this sounds so counterintuitive, but get rid of some of the business so that you attract the right type of people. When I moved, another house story, when I moved into my now house, the first thing I did is I tried to get oil delivery. Here in the Northeast, we get oil. That's how we heat our homes, many of us. So we get oil delivery. And I called up, on Google, I saw the cheapest rate. I called up the person. I saw that their service area was like literally on the cusp of my neighborhood. And I said, hey, I'd like to become a customer of yours. And they said, we apologize, but we don't serve your neighborhood. I'm like, you serve the street that leads into my street. Like literally it's another 20 feet. They said, I understand. This is our delivery area. And I'm sure most people would have freaked out. I was actually like proud of them because they must have done the math and said like, it costs us X dollars to deliver past this point. So for us to be the cheapest or the most affordable oil delivery service out there, we can only go this far. And that's where they drew the line. And that's how they keep their costs down, which is why they have a really good clientele in that area. Now, of course, you and I might argue, Matt, well, why don't you build another facility down the road? You can start to scale up that way. But maybe this is exactly how big they want to be. But choices like that have both good and bad outcomes. It could be good for your business, it could be bad. But the idea is by niching down, they've removed a lot of the competition. They're no longer playing in a certain price point. They can undercut almost every single one of their competitors.
Well, and this is a great example because at Full Scale, we had a marketing agency that we work with, and they're kind of a general B2B marketing. They help a lot with kind of influencer marketing and things that I cared about, which was great. But I'm like, you know what? I need an expert at SEO. Was not them. They are not like experts at SEO. Right. They are not an expert at LinkedIn ads. So you know what I did? I found a vendor, two different vendors. One that's an expert at SEO and another one that's an expert at LinkedIn ads. And because that's what I needed the help with. Like, I'm like, where is the Patrick Mahomes or Tom Brady of the thing I need help with? I need to win. Where are they? I'm not trying to figure this out with somebody who just sort of knows this thing. Where is the expert, right? And so I'm willing to pay more for that expertise as well. Like back to your example of, the nurse practitioner or doctor versus the specialist, right? Like I'm willing to pay more. Where's the specialist?
Right, exactly. Yeah. And I think that's important to recognize. And those people continue to improve their quality of service too. So that's another thing to keep in mind. If you are niching down, you are going to get better, either at the task you're doing or serving the clientele that you wish to serve.
Yeah, you should become an expert at that thing.
Yeah.
All right, so next on your list was Forge. And when you went through these real quickly before, it was the one I was a little more confused about. Tell us more about Forge again.
Yeah, so Forge is when you create something that's not your core offering, but that's keeping in alignment with the other things that you do. So one example for us is the Agents of Change conference. We have Flight New Media. That's our digital agency, 27 years. We do it for you. But we also have this brand called the Agents of Change. It is a weekly podcast. It is an annual conference located in Portland, Maine, and online. And then we also, for the first year ever, did this virtual summit. And this is also all about digital marketing. It's really about helping people become the best digital marketer they can be. So we put on this event in Maine, and we get, 450 people to come to it, which, by the way, for Maine is a lot of people. We only have one area code here, so to get that many people into one room is actually kind of cool. Now, you can come to the event, attend the event, and not be a customer of Flight. And you can be a customer of Flight and never attend the event. Like, it's not part of our services or offering. It's just something that we do. But it's been a great driver of traffic and business for us because I'm sure like you, when you get new business, you're like, how did you hear of us? And very often somebody will say, well, I've been attending the Agents of Change for years and I'm finally ready for a website or SEO, what have you. I'm up on stage and, I'm the MC for the Agents of Change, but I've got my booth for Flight New Media there. People see me up there and all of a sudden Flight New Media becomes associated with this brand that's all about being the best digital marketer you can possibly be. That has gotten us into more spaces and more offices than almost anything else we do. And some of our biggest, longest term clients have come because of this conference that you do not need to attend. You don't need to listen to the podcast. When I talk about creating something, it could be also something like maybe you're creating a scholarship, based on the kind of things that you do. That could be another thing. It's outside of what you normally offer, but it makes sense to what you're doing. And it can even be alignment with I don't want to get too political, but it could be in alignment with your politics. A few years ago, Ben & Jerry's came out with an ice cream flavor they called Pecan Resist. And the money raised from this, the first $100,000, went to 4 progressive groups. Now, you may say, well, that's not my politics. That's fine. But they attracted so much more attention. If you look at their social media posts, both pro and con, when they released this, it was like 100 times the engagement they got for any other ice cream they had ever released because they were tapping into people's belief system. So that's another way that you can tap into this idea of Forge and really show your company show your clients what you're all about. And very often we make decisions on what company to go for if they're in alignment with our own values. So that can be a powerful tool as well.
Would you include this podcast and newsletter as another example of that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, people can hire you, buy your services, never having listened to the podcast, although they'd be foolish not to listen to your podcast, and vice versa. So absolutely, you're creating something that's not required for the purchase of your main offering, but it does kind of help set you apart from everybody else.
So here's another great example of that. At one of my previous companies called Stackify, we were struggling a lot with sales and a lot of types of digital marketing were not working for us. And I believe it's the Traction book by Gino Wickman. I'm sure you've heard of it.
Love it. Yep.
Talks a lot about traction channels. There's about 20 different traction channels. And going through that, search engine optimization, organic worked really well for us, and that was a channel we doubled down on. But there was another channel that we identified from reading this book that goes along with this, which was engineering as marketing. And for us, that was perfect, and it goes along perfectly with what we're talking about here with the Forge, where we went and built a free product that people could use, that they could download, and they loved it. And then a certain percentage of people that loved that free product would come and pay for our core product, right? And so it was like a community sort of free thing that we put out there, and everybody loved it. It was the same sort of thing. But we engineered that thing. Like, we built that thing and gave it away for free. Like, it was software. So I think there's a lot of different ways to think about ways that you could do this. Like, HubSpot was famous for doing this a long time ago for like their website grader, and a lot of digital marketing companies like yours probably do different like free reviews or free proposals and this and what and all that kind of stuff. It's like free value that you're kind of giving away that you hope like 10% of the people buy or whatever, right? Because you did the free study for them or whatever. And there's a lot of different ways to do this that is kind of great for lead generation.
Absolutely. And awareness and earned media and all those good things.
So talk to me more about Frame, and I really love the positioning in a different way. And I imagine a whole bunch of companies that had to do this during COVID.
Yeah,
they had to probably reposition totally what they did and how they did it, or some of them were just positioned out, like they were just toast.
Absolutely.
So
one good example of this is Red Bull, right? So when Red Bull first came to market, Red Bull existed. Apparently, from my research, it was like popular among like Indian cab drivers. That was about it. But then all of a sudden, they get bought going to make it a global product. And they could have gone head to head with like Coke and Pepsi, and I'm sure they would have been crushed. But instead, what they did is they repositioned themselves as an energy drink. They even shrank the size of the can down to 8 ounces, famously. And they also talked about one unique ingredient they had called taurine, right? And so all of a sudden this became an energy drink. Now they own, I believe it's like 60% of the market. They made like $20 billion in, the last year. They're crushing it. And part of this was because instead of just saying that they were another sugar water, they said we're an energy drink. They positioned themselves that way, and that really helped them. And then another good example that I had discovered by reading the book, The Introvert's Advantage, I think it was. I'm blanking on the exact title, The Introvert's Edge. And Matthew Pollard is the author, and he talks about he was a business coach working with this woman named Wendy Huang, who was teaching Mandarin out in California and doing great business. And then all of a sudden, things changed, and there were a bunch of inexpensive alternatives that entered the market. There were actually, because of the internet, people from China were actually going online and teaching people for like a fraction of the cost, and she was losing her business because of this. And he came in and discovered that a couple of her clients were actually business people who were moving to China and had hired her to help with the transition. And it turns out not only was she teaching them Mandarin, but she was also teaching them the techniques and ethics of Chinese business and how they should behave in meetings. And she was also working with their spouses and children so that they would be prepared for this culture shock when they got over to China. And this is a very expensive thing for companies to relocate employees there only to have it fail. And he said, so what you're really doing is helping people succeed in China, not teaching them Mandarin. And he helped her rebrand as the China Success Coach. She started to be able to charge so much more. She was booked solid. She wasn't competing on price anymore, right? She was now showing her value that I will help you as a business person succeed in China, not just teach you Mandarin. So again, she wasn't just using the idea of frame. She was also using the idea of focus, where she started only going after business people who were relocating to China. And just a good example of always try and use multiple lenses if you can to really set yourself apart from the competition.
Well, and I think one of the greatest examples of this is when you go to somebody's website and you're trying to figure out within like 5 seconds, right? Is this the solution for me? And just like if I was Googling stuff about how to learn Chinese, if I landed on a site that also said, hey, are you moving to China? You have all these problems. I can help you with you. That would be way more interesting. But probably my favorite example of this is like a law firm. Like if I'm looking for a law firm because I have a speeding ticket or I have child custody issues and I need help with family law, like I want to land on a lawyer's website and immediately it says like they do that kind of law, right? If they just say they do like generic business law or something, I'm like, I don't feel confident that they're going to help me. Versus if I land on somebody else's website that's very niche down and said, hey, we only do speeding tickets, we can help you, right? I'm like, I'm in. Right? And sometimes we don't want to focus, but that focus and the framing of it makes such a difference in marketing.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's a lot of ways that you can use the framing and the focus in any one of these tools to help you. And that's the whole goal. You want to be remarkable in the eyes of your customers. So they're not going to be able to compare you to the competition. They're just going to say this person or this company is right for me, or they're not. And that's totally fine too. Because you know what? We've all had those clients that we wish we had recognized those red flags, not taken them on. And if you use the Remarkability Formula and you set yourself up as this is who I am, this is what I do for these type of people, then when the wrong type of customer approaches you, they're going to self-select and they're going to say, this is not the right person for me. And they're going to go find another solution, which is absolutely fine. And you're going to be left with the clients that you can help the most.
So tell us more about your digital marketing conference that you're doing. Is that a massive labor of love? Is that like a whole ton of work for you for the next 3 or 4 months before it
Yes.
happens?
Even after 9 years of doing it, it is just such a heavy lift. I can't even begin to describe. We do budget for it. We budget both hours and dollars for it. It is a lot of work. Our goal is to, from a financial standpoint, break even. Treat it like a marketing event, right? Or a marketing campaign. And it, like I said, it does bring in business, and we've seen the long-term positive results for this. But yeah, putting on an event is a lot of work. But getting back to my earlier point about you want to find those areas of remarkability that are hard to compete on, this would be a perfect example of this. So if I came up with a very clever Facebook ad campaign and one of the other agencies in town saw it, how long could it take them to replicate almost the exact campaign, maybe with their own colors? Like no time at all. There's no barrier to entry in most of like the social ads and Google ads and stuff. It's just money or time. But putting on an event is such a big lift. And a lot of the speakers who come to speak at our event come because I have a personal relationship with them. Either they've come on my podcast, I've gotten to know them. I also do a lot of speaking around the country. So we've gotten together, we've gone to speakers' dinners, we've had some late night drink somewhere, and on the top of some building in California or Vegas, I've convinced them over tequila that they should really come to Maine for October and spend some time with me and do a presentation at my event. So there are things that I can do much more easily that my competition, they'd have to pay $5,000, $10,000 a speaker to get the caliber of speakers into this event. But because I have that relationship, that's a superpower I have. I can tap into that. Hard to compete on that. So we're able to do this, and this is something that we're going to focus on, and I'll let my competitors find their own remarkability that they're going to focus on, whether it's low price or e-commerce or whatever it is that they may want to focus on.
So one of the things you mentioned before was, running a digital marketing company is tough, right? It's professional services. How do you translate that into potentially recurring revenue? So over time, you build like a bigger book of recurring revenue for a digital marketing company.
Matt, that is such a great question, and I'm glad that you brought that up because, I had no business background. Literally, the only business background I had from college was I was a very good typist, so I typed papers for students for beer money. This was before everybody had a personal computer, right? So I'd have to go down to the computer lab. I'd take their longhand form and I'd write it up for $1.50 a page. And that was all the beer money I needed for the week. And I did it. Most of the people who hired me were business majors. So that was my business education. And so for years, all I was doing was project-based work in this, whether it was website design or SEO. It was like we'd do something, we'd hand it off to you and be done. And hopefully you'd come back. 5 years or so ago, we made the decision to move to at least 60% of our revenue was going to be recurring. And I'm very happy to announce that we did it in about 3 years. And that's been a game changer for us. So if there are people out there, whatever industry you're in, I think one of the most valuable things you can do for your own business is to find those recurring revenue streams. For us, some of them were easy, like doing Google ads and doing Facebook/Meta ads. Those almost have to be recurring work. SEO, we moved from doing a one-time thing to we're working on your website every single month. We're creating content for your web. So there's those recurring things as well. Even things like hosting. We also started developing a WordPress care plan where we take care of the websites every month, even if you don't want to do much with your website, just keep them fresh and free of spammers. So we found these ways in which we could add value. I mean, these aren't things that I'm just finding, new ways to build clients, but we found places where we could provide value for customers. And the best way to do that was to be working with them month in and month out. And the other nice benefit of that is as you start to build a relationship with these clients, they start to treat you like part of the team. And so it's more likely that you are going to stick around and they're going to keep on renewing month after month. And that's what we found over time is that we have really great retention since we moved to that recurring revenue model. Plus, now I can look a month or 2 or 5 or 6 in advance and know, do I need to bring on more people? Do I need to pull back? Do I need to go out and get more work? So I sleep better at night, I guess is one of the biggest benefits of all.
Yeah. Well, Full Scale is also a type of professional services business, right? But the same way, we don't do project work. Like, so if somebody came to me and said, hey, I need to build this mobile app. How long is it going to take? How much is it going to cost? And like, no idea. We don't even do that. Right. But if you need a mobile developer, we got one for you. And it might cost you $5,000 a month for however long you need a mobile developer. And usually you need one for a long time, right? Yeah. And so that's our model, and that's why we have grown. Is we have specifically said, hey, we don't do that kind of project work for the same reason. Like you come in, you do the project for 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, and then they're gone, and you're chasing the next project. And so for the same reason, that's why we've been really successful on the more on the talent staffing side, right? Like we're providing the talent to our customers, and most people who need a software developer need one for a long time, right? They're building this stuff forever. Much like in your case, people need somebody to help do SEO or content creation, manage your Google Ads for a long period of time, right? So it creates a lot more recurring revenue for the long haul, and makes this kind of business a lot easier to do.
Right. And if you want to sell your business at some point, which isn't in my near-term plans, having that recurring revenue makes your company so much more valuable. If I was trying to sell my business as it existed 15 years ago, the biggest benefit it would be is if I stuck around, because I had the relationships with all of our customers. They were only doing business because they kind of had gotten to know me. But now I have more people on my team. They're used to meeting with them monthly. They know the work's coming in, the work's going out. So you become much more valuable if you do want to end up selling your company down the road.
Well, I really appreciate having you on the show today. Can you mentioned to me before that you have a podcast. Can you tell us more about your podcast as well?
Sure. It's under the Agents of Change brand. So you can find it under Agents of Change in your favorite podcasting platform. And it's a weekly podcast where I interview digital marketing experts. Usually there's a specific focus of what they do, and we just try and get some really actionable tips about what we can do to reach and engage more of our ideal customers. A wide variety of topics around search, social, digital marketing, a lot of AI these days, even some blockchain stuff thrown in, but all with the goal of helping companies build their presences online. And we just, launched episode 537 as of this recording. So I've been doing it for quite a while now.
That's awesome. Well, we'll put a link to that in the show notes, and then your guys' company is takeflight.com. We'll put a link to the show notes there. Well, Rich, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Matt, absolute pleasure. Great questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.